Okay, we're going to talk about organizing pieces of evidence inside a paragraph. And we're going to assume that all of these pieces of evidence that I've created can be unified by a topic sentence. So we've already decided that all of these pieces should go into this paragraph, and that there's an association that links all of them together. So the first step is to decide, how am I going to arrange all of these pieces of evidence inside of the body paragraph? And this is a basic decision you need to make. And there are three general categories of how one might organize evidence that we'll talk about. But we decide on organization based on reflecting on the pieces of evidence that we're looking at right now. So if we look at all of these pieces of evidence, one way that we might realize that we can group elements together is that I would group the circles together, and then I would group the triangles together. And so this topic sentence might be on geometric shapes. That's the idea that is going to unify pieces of evidence. So I realize that there are two different types of groupings. One, we have circles. So that means that I am attaching this associative word circle to these three pieces of evidence. Okay? And then I'm going to attach the word triangle to those pieces of evidence. That's the associative idea, that these four pieces can be grouped by. So inside the paragraph, the topic sentence on geometric shapes, I have a section that I'm going to talk about circles, and then a section I'm going to talk about triangles. So what I've created here is two conceptual ideas are grouping the inside of this body paragraph. And whenever I go from the association in the topic sentence and then I decide to subdivide it or break it down further into more than one associative idea, I say I'm organizing by idea. That's the concept. Okay. Let's take a look at the same grouping again. And there's another possible way of organizing. And that is, I have three colors. So, for instance, this piece of evidence and this piece of evidence can be grouped together by the idea of orange. And my topic sentence might be colors. And so I'm going to end up with, in this case, those pieces of evidence are associated with red. These are associated with black. So what I've created in this paragraph, I've created three ideas. I've got orange, red, and black. So I am still organizing by idea. Now, the other very important concept, when I decide that in this case I'm organizing by idea. I have several different associations, in this case regarding geometry inside the paragraph. So I have my topic sentence. I need to select some language, usually before I get to the section, the first section. So for instance, I might first circles. So I've got some language there that indicates that I'm now going to be talking about circles for the next couple of sentences. Okay? And so the organizational language I've chosen here indicates that I'm talking about the first idea. And then I'll start, as I get inside, quoting the examples of the circles. But I know that this section is all about circles. When I'm finished with this section on circles, and then I might put next, I'm going to talk about squares. So this language, this is the organizational language that I'm placing near the beginning of the sentences to indicate that the whole next series of examples will be on squares. So what's important when you're organizing by idea, you need to let us know early at the beginning of the sentence, before you enter into your first chunk, okay, your first series of pieces of evidence that all connect to this association, so that when we start reading them, we know, okay, we're talking about circles, and now we're shifting to talk about squares. So we want to be concerned about the language we place at the beginnings of these different sections as we move from one piece of evidence to the next, if they have to do with a different idea. Okay. Now, if, for instance, we find ourselves, we have a topic sentence, and let's just say it's going to deal just with circles. And when we look at the evidence, visually it sort of appears like this to us. And this sequence, we're not organizing by idea because we only have one single associative concept that we're talking about in the entire paragraph. Okay, so we're not subdividing into different types of circles, different nuances. So this is not going to be subdivided. So we're not going to organize by idea. So when we look at the pieces of evidence, they appear to us sort of in a linear fashion, and they look to us in our head to follow a certain chronology. And so this organizational method is to organize by time. And so the language that we'll be using will be time words. First, next, later, finally. This is the language that indicates, okay, he's organizing by time. The initial, the opening line. So when we have a single associative concept like circles, and we're having no variations, we're not going to organize by idea, we're going to organize at this point because we see that they sort of move chronologically. Now, again, we've got circles. And when we look at all of our circles, this is how they seem to sort of line up. And what's happening is that these pieces of evidence, these 3, these 4, these are all organizing themselves spatially or by place. So when we select organizational language, we might say in the left corner we have some circles. And of course in a novel, on the farm or in the city, so you're taking us to different locations, spatial locations, and so you'll see some language that indicates a particular location. So at this location, in the left-hand corner, I'm going to talk about 3 pieces of evidence. Then I'm going to go to the right-hand corner. I'm going to go to a different location, and I'm going to talk about some other pieces of evidence. The trick here is to make sure that your language, as you're shifting from each chunk to chunk, indicates, okay, he's moving spatially. Okay, let's take a look at some paragraph charts. Okay, let's take a look at some paragraph chart examples. These are the sample paragraph charts, and the first example here is organized by idea. And if you look at the colors, you'll see that the key idea in this paragraph is defining a virtuous pilgrim. And there are several traits that are broken down. So the brown area, the brown examples, are dealing with respecting others. Then all the purple sentences are dealing with humility. And then the blue. So we've got 3 separate virtues that are organizing this paragraph. So this is governed by idea. And so all of these sentences have to do with that. That's why there's no entry. I'll just sort of clear this ink a little bit. If we look, as you're doing the paragraph chart, there's no entry in these boxes because it would be respecting others, because these sentences all have to do with that idea. The same with humility. These sentences are linked by that associative concept. And the same with the final. Okay? Now, if, for instance, when you do your paragraph chart, and say, for instance, you have respecting others, you have this concept, and then say immediately you have humility there, what you're telling me is you're not elaborating sufficiently on respecting others. So what the chart shows us is that there's elaboration of this concept going on in these sentences. These are the moments where we're expanding on the idea. Okay, now if we look at our next example, again, the colors tell us a lot. Obviously, all of these sentences have to do with the same associative idea, but in this case, we have a single idea, and that is this concept, we'll look here, of Joe as a surrogate father, and that these are the key concepts right here that we're going to be focusing on. And we see these concepts not separately but in 3 different places. So we're first going to take a look at the opening kitchen scene, and these 3 sentences all are staying focused there. That's why we don't have any entries in that box. And then as we go further down, notice, again, we talked about we hit that transitional language to say, okay, we're moving to a different place later at the Christmas dinner. So these two sentences are there. Finally, in London, so we know we're moving into a whole new set of different pieces of evidence. Okay, so again, these are three different places where we've decided that these chunks of evidence group themselves. Okay, and the key, remember, is to place this transitional language. It goes at the beginnings of these sentences. So we place later at the Christmas dinner. Notice it occurs right there. So as we're coming off of the previous chunk of evidence, as we move into the next series, we know, okay, we're now shifting later. We're moving in time as well. So this is both time and place. But the key is to make sure that this language that you're placing in the organization box appears actually at the beginning of your sentence. Okie dokie.